Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever it is, wherever you are. In my case being morning, happy Sunday morning. Welcome back to what is still at this point the Easy Reefers Fish Room, although I'm considering a channel change. Fortunately for me, I knew this day would come, so I registered an email separate of this channel so as to back up the Easy Reefers channel when I decided to change the channel name. So I have a non-attached easyreefers@gmail email account. Yep, that's going to come in handy with the whole people not stealing this one. But today, I realized that I could really sum up this theorem and some rules regarding kinetic energy that seem to me very familiar, as if I taught physics this way once in the past. And well, there's some things that I've been going through, kind of reviewing to see if they're a matter of evidence or interpretation, basically to see if the existing experiments and theories still apply, whether or not it's just a matter of actual philosophical perspective, whether one properly interprets the data. And I think that's actually the case, as weird as that sounds. So this video is going to be presenting the way I think I used to teach it, and we're going to be talking about solar panels and quarks and leptons and the Higgs-Bozon particle and the big reactor that they made. What does it do? What do particle accelerators do? What the hell is radiation? How can there be a radioactive cloud if there's no particles? Well, it's all easier done than said, but we're going to see if we can't clear things up and see if this actually makes sense right after I get some coffee. So go ahead and get yourself some coffee, because you're going to need your brain power for this one. Okay, the coffee is made. How you doing, Conway? So, see if I already coffeeed up. Oh, that's good. I've been awake for a hot minute, kind of nursing down what was left of last night's coffee. And sitting under 2 blankets because it was kind of freaking cold. Cold in here, hot and muggy in the bedroom, because my master bedroom closet has about 1/3 of the ceiling missing. You know, underneath where the roof leaks. So we basically have a giant trough, bigger than my blue tub in the corner, in my closet, just to catch rainwater. Isn't that fucking lovely? I had to sump the damn thing so it automatically drains. Just fucking drill a hole in the floor. I mean, who gives a fuck around here? Yeah, I can't, for the life of me. I'm checking out all the things that report on the latest science and shit, right? And maybe they're just not in depth enough, and maybe I just don't understand. But what I think it actually is a function of an IQ over 148 versus right below it. Okay. And now I'm well over 148, so I'm speaking about a lot of people who are theoretically much less intelligent than me, but much more productive and capable of me, because generally speaking, once you pass about 154 with your IQ, you become kind of useless unless you've had like a silver spoon upbringing and been sent to school and shit like that, right? So once you get past 165 or so, you become what I call an idiot savant. You have extreme gifts in certain or many areas, but there are some simple things that elude you. Like Einstein, for instance. Einstein was an idiot savant. He understood science fiction in a way that was so intoxicating, it became a science. Now, I was even thinking about the effects of time and perceived time and the way I understand those equations to be interpreted. And my interpretation of things in general in this theory are a hell of a lot less science fiction-like than quantum mechanics and general relativity as they currently stand. Time travel, for instance, is impossible. Teleportation, beaming me up, Scotty, impossible. Okay. However, traveling faster than the speed of light is entirely probable. Now, let me just say this, that historically, I'm on the track that suffers less from psychosis. Okay, as usual. But the crazy guy who thinks he's Jesus, I don't, but I've been accused of such. I tend to have the more rational path when it comes to most things. And, well, teleportation and beaming things from place to place is imaginary. It's something that we've done on television. Okay. Imagining limits to speed and theorizing and basing science on our theories about why we can't go faster than a certain speed, that's called history. We've been down that path before. Okay, so my rationale is superior to yours in that speed is a barrier that we keep breaking. And people like you keep setting. But as you may know from one or two previous videos, I know something about speed. And I even know enough about speed to know the frequency of my own thought and body processes. I sense my own harmony, as it were. And I can tell when my brain's working well, and I can tell when my brain's working poorly, or just sluggishly, when not to challenge it, that kind of thing. But when it comes to a matter of pure gray matter activation and just being able to push your brain beyond the limits of current structure to form a new computer algorithm by force of will and imagination, that's something that, in my opinion, the higher the number of your IQ, chances are the better you're going to be at it. Even to the point where you can be an idiot who can only do that. I'm not saying I am, but it's not much of a stretch. Anyways. Music. To reconnect. Why? Why in God's name? I dig music. Okay? That's all I wanted to say. YouTube had to go and fuck with me. In fact, the internet in general has been quite fuckered lately. So, I dig music. I dig this little schwa thing that my hair's doing. Is that a tilde? Do you pronounce me with a nye? Sorry. I think only I've probably found that funny. Maybe you had to go to school in Houston. Much ado about tildes. But anyways, I need to get this shit done before people start waking up around here. So. Music. Bob Marley was apparently obsessed with resonance. You know, I've looked at the digital manipulation of waveforms. You know, I went to audio engineering in college. Okay. So that's the one thing that I probably know better than most scientists is how sound resonates. Okay, so resonance is something I'm very familiar with, especially when it comes to the breaking down of resonant waveforms, because, you know, from manipulating audio data, the different complexities and formulas applied to waves, and statistically how 2 out of 3 lighters might not work. I mean, that's beside the point. Well, when it comes to perceiving atomic energy, or subatomic energy, quote unquote, I think the word subatomic no longer applies. I think the word particle physics no longer applies. This is non-particle physics, or atomic physics. I can only call it the Morris model because my name's Sean Morris and this is my fucking model. Now, let's talk about forces, okay? Now, my experience with resonance and music kind of leads me to perceive a different sort of pattern to a vibration of a sphere in a way that can cause negative and positive charges to be quote unquote observed through photoelectric detection, okay, or high frequency electron bombardment, supposedly. Basically they x-ray it. Okay, that's all it is, basically an x-ray. What non-particle physics proposes is that essentially everything from X-ray, gamma ray, all the way infrared and visible light, microwaves, it's all essentially the same energy at different frequencies. Different frequencies and different frequency wakes, let's call them, or resonance wakes. When it comes to quarks, leptons, and the Higgs-Bozon particle, the reason why supersymmetry was not found in the Higgs-Boson experiments is because they are not particles. Kinda. They are resonance wakes. So they become particle-like in that they form a cross between a wave and a point, basically becoming similar to what I was defining cosmic strings as, at the point when many, many, many waves collide. It might become a cosmic string out in space when they collide parallel to each other from many, many points. Okay? It's a hell of a statistical unlikelihood, but it's possible. Anyways. So particulate wakes or particulate emissions could be made, for instance, purposefully in a resonance drive. Here you see two high-powered multi-stage resonance drives configured to my previous hovering maneuverable gunship. And these rely on basically the manufacture of resonance wakes and create basically a jet version of your little bladeless air fan. So much higher voltage, more spaced out, more defined pulses. And you might actually get something to move. But you're not making particles. You're making things that kind of seem particle-like. And, well, when it comes to all this stuff, the truth is in the eye of the beholder. As I explained previously, when you, for instance, see light, okay, when you see a photon, when you see a single point of light, when you see a single strobe from a star, what you're looking at is a grounding point. You, your eyeball, is the grounding point. You're not looking at a particle that travels all the way from here to here. You're becoming the grounding point in a wave that's emitted from here to here. So when they detect particles, they're not looking at particles. Their detection point becomes a perceived particle because it is the grounding point of that wave. What does this mean? Well, this means physics can now be described in three subcategories of kinetic and potential energy. Or, actually, it's better to say that kinetic and potential energy divide these categories, really. So you have polaric energy, which is electricity, magnetism, and, of course, lasers. I like to say lasers just in case they might be attached to sharks and used for evil purposes. Or porpoises, one of the two. But anyways. Polaic, basically being a Latin hybrid between polaric and pelagic. Okay. That includes light, radiation, and most organic electromagnetic emanations. Okay. And then there's the antipolar forces, okay, which means irregardless of happening without, or basically can happen related to, but don't change the charge of it, okay? Because what it all boils down to, science is about observing force. It's all just a bunch of Jedis trying to understand the force. That's what science really is. So, gravity, sound, inertia, momentum. those are the antipolar forces. Polaric, polaic, and antipolar. Can a resonance drive system be reversed to create a tractor beam? A tractor beam would have to be accomplished by first having the exact isotopic data of every single molecule that you're trying to tractor. And basically you would need to emit frequencies in the amount required for each of those elements that would create a resonance-based polaric shift. Okay. Basically, you would force it to magnetize. That's the only way. From there, it would just kind of go towards you. But like as far as like a magical glowy light comes down and the ship just goes where you want, no. That's not a speed barrier, you know? That's just some shit we thought of. It's cool. I mean, I wish it could work, but it would take basically a massive array of additional programmed electromagnets to gain control in any meaningful sense of said object or secondary spacecraft, whatever. But that's the only way to really create a tractor beam. Yeah, I mean, then you'd have an array of magnets meant to reverse polarity and then cushion against that. So you would essentially create sort of an artificial gravity well, which I'll explain gravity in a second. Let's not get ahead of ourselves with the whole, you know, people thinking that there's a particle called gravity out there, which is kind of the dumbest fucking thing I've ever heard people calling themselves scientists come up with. I'm sorry. A particle called graviton. Well, the Starship Enterprise had a graviton emitter, so there has to be a part. No, there doesn't. Sorry. I like it too. It's fancy. I like it. I like it. Don't get me wrong. I like it. But I'm objective, okay? And that's what people in science these days seem to fucking lack, is objectivity. They're so desperate to disprove God and prove the existence of aliens and, oh, it's just, it's a bizarre little sausage fest they got going. That's all I have to say. So, anyways, 3 types of atomic energy: polaric, polaic, and antipolar. Now, your polaric energies will result in a charge of greater than or equal to 1 millivolt. Electricity, magnetism, lasers, with or without sharks. Your polaic energies: light. The idea that light, let's just get this out of the way. The idea that light does not have a charge means that solar panels should not work. Light has a charge. You neutralize the charge when you measure the light. Okay, again, you are the grounding point. The measuring instrument becomes the grounding point. Whatever it is neutralizes the very slight, very, 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 very tiny charge that light has. Okay? Whereas opposed to solar panels, harness and amplify that charge. Anyways, just the very idea that light doesn't have a charge when there are things called solar panels should have been thought through a little more. Anyway. So, radiation. That's something worth discussing on its own. Because, like I had with my imaginary isotopes, see, look, I can do imaginary science too. I can imagine that there's a fucking an isotope. I can imagine that that formula makes sense, first of all. And it's not just a note to make me remember shit. A neutron, nucleus, whatever you want to call it, okay, that those words no longer mean anything in this theory. But we can still use them to refer to the, basically an imaginary force that exists inside of these things, and we can call them neutrons because they, in a way, they do have mass based upon the overall momentum of this thing we got going here. And the fact that they take up space, they have an imaginary existence, kind of. But what they are is a result of a resonant center of causality. And by causality, I mean just a frequency of energy at an amplitude, and that amplitude can be made to increase in different ways. Okay? These ways, these different patterns of resonance, cause either disruptions or enhancements to the mass, or to the overall system. Okay, one type of resonance is going to get you an increase in stability in the center. Another type of resonance is going to get you a decrease in stability in the exterior, or actually kind of an increase in kinetic energy, an increase in kinetic energy without a decrease in stability. That's yeah, there, canonize that shit. So then you have of nucleic mass, or the of a neutron, or the excitement of a valence, or the, you know, the cloud, the electron cloud. Yeah, it's not a cloud. It's a waveform. You're detecting it as a cloud that resolves into a particle because, again, the instrument of detection is the grounding point. Just a philosophical difference on the same data yields a lot more results. Now, obviously, like all forms of energy, these things divide quite readily into kinetic and potential energy. And it seems to me like balanced, non-resonant atomic energy is potential energy, the same way it would be in particle physics. And radiation, or unbalanced resonant energy, would be kinetic energy. So picture this as a globe, okay? And you have waves. These waves are eventually going to smack against each other because the resonance amplifies them to a point where they have more force than they would just normally. And they won't just splash a little, they'll go whoosh. You ever see that happen in the ocean? When just occasionally you'll have some waves just go clap and a big old squirt comes out. Well, that's radiation. That is the destabilization of this before it loses that extra bit of energy and then resolves into this. That is a wave. It's not a particle. It is much like the Higgs-Bozon, the needles, or like this little theorem contraption. It is an atomic wake. It's a resonant wake. once it's perceived. These are resonant wakes that are just, so powerful, okay? But say a single piece of radiation would only be a resonant wake once it's perceived. Until then, it would just be a wave, just another wave going at a frequency. Now, the reason why radiation is harmful is because, metaphorically speaking, think of it like the one place you can hit a rock to shatter it. The one type, direction, and strength of stroke. That one type of wave can cause a disruptive resonance that will, say, for instance, break down some of the molecules in your liver, pancreas. And your left nut if you keep your cell phone in this pocket too much. Or your left ovary, depending on whether or not you are a hermaphrodite. I mean, wait, no. I was trying to say something a little more funny, but that was all I could get as far as unexpected went. Anyways. So, basically, let's just pretend that these are roughly what they should be. If you have a wave that is just right enough to come in here and cause that wave to collapse, you'll wind up with little people on surfboards. No. Essentially, you could have a lot of different effects of this. You can have, for instance, nuclear radiation. You can have excitement of the outer valence. You could have destruction of the molecule. You could have, theoretically, you could have the cancellation of two molecules from each other. Because a waveform could be canceled by an equal but opposite waveform. So you could, if you could have enough of a certain molecule around one molecule, sorry, atoms, I know, because y'all call them atoms nowadays, because the Bible means nothing to you. I'm not better. Ho, 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 Merry Christmas. Anyway. You could emit a proper type of radiation to those molecules, which would then emit a proper type of radiation that would cancel out the molecule in the center. Just make it bleep out of existence. That would take as much energy as is contained in this molecule, and it would be completely pointless, but it would prove that particles don't exist. Isn't that fancy? In fact, I think your Higgs-Bozon contraption there in Europe could probably do that. I don't know why. That's kind of like what it is to me. It's just a big fucking clusterfuck of magnets with a bunch of computers that I could have programmed when I was 15. Anyway. I'm not bragging, I'm lamenting, because I'm stupid now. I couldn't even fucking JavaScript if I tried. I could still do all the logic, but the language, no. I got frustrated by one too many semicolons, and I deleted that shit from my database. Help with the headaches. Oh, no, I can't think about it too much. I'm starting to see blue screen with white writing. Oh, God, make it stop. All right, so anyways, what were some of the things? Atomic clocks. Okay. This makes more sense than particle physics when it comes to an atomic clock. Especially when it comes to proving the actual manner in which the whole thing is misperceived. Okay? Matter of perception, right? Well, if an electron's location is uncertain, how is an atomic clock accurate? Because the act of perception makes it certain. So wait, aren't you telling the clock when to... No. Because, and only because, if and only if, it is a waveform that you're measuring to begin with that resolves at the act of perception. If it was a particle with an indeterminate location, capable of fucking teleporting and time travel and all this other weird shit, it wouldn't make a very good clock hand, okay? But because it is a waveform modulating at a frequency, now, not around and around again, it's a complicated modulation. And the bigger the molecule, or what you kids call an atom, the more complicated the modulation. Now, while I'm sitting there talking about you kids and your misuse of terms, you know, like Magdalene and Galilean, let's go into atom, shall we? Why do I call this a molecule? Well, when a molecule is formed, as you know it, you know, multiple atoms, don't they operate as one thing? Well, I think probably organic molecules are the only exception, if I'm not mistaken. And this is because non-organic compounds form a resonant coalescence and become something very similar to a singular atom. So, to me, a non-organic compound is just a more complicated atom. So I just call it a molecule anyways. Atom is a molecule. Because to me, an atom is the name of a whole different type of orb. One that's much more complex and ancient. But anyways, so atomic clocks, pulsating, resonance, back and forth, back and forth, 1, 2, tick tock. No uncertainty principle. Okay. The uncertainty principle should be statistically analogous to the conductivity between two copper plates at high voltage. Okay? Because the perceived randomness of perception is simply the occurrence of how random our perception is. Like if you had a strobing camera taking a picture of a atom that could take a picture once every what do you want to call this unit of measurement? I think it already has a name. Electronic revolution. Every Bohr, let's just call it a Bohr. But if it could take a picture once every revolution, and it took the picture in the same place, there would always be an electron in that same place. Because unless it, based upon statistical probability, occurred outside of the function and one was unable to make contact, or basically was unable to cause an electrical arc, okay, it would have an arc in the same place just about every single time. In fact, it should be completely regular if you're actually managed to do it once every Bohr. Okay, so what are some of the other things? We got radiation, we got atomic clocks. Can I see the title? I don't think I can even see the title. We did solar panels. We did the list of the different breakdowns. We can do some more breakdowns of kinetic and potential energy examples. That does sound... Oh, gravity. Gravity. There we go. Speaking of kinetic and potential energy. Gravity. It's like a weird hybrid of the two, actually. It's potential energy that requires no additional stimuli to become kinetic, other than placement. Now, then you can get into the chicken before the egg argument, but, you know, that's irrespective. Gravity between two bodies. Let's just make these balls in space. You know, there's always got to be two of them. Well, this object obviously has a resonance, and this object has a resonance. Now, if this were negative and this were positive, there'd be no question about what would happen there. If they were both positive, if they were both negative, there'd be no question about what would happen there. But the thing is, neither one of these things is neutral. They are both positive and negative in equal amounts. This is a resonant waveform. This is a resonant waveform. Actually, no, just waveforms. Just waveforms, okay? Not even necessarily resonant yet, although they would be, but for the purposes of this explanation, they don't need to be resonant or considered as resonant yet. This is attracted to that. This is attracted to that. This is repelling that. This is repelling that. But here, you have a resonant waveform that is not a particle. It is a weak force. It is statistically almost insignificant. But when it occurs in great enough quantities, it is possible these two objects would attract each other because of the resonance that occurs without any opposing weak force. These two objects would gradually be attracted together because you don't have any opposing body in this postulate. It's a matter of random interference eventually becoming harmonious. Now, in the case of, say, if I wanted to hypothesize why on a large object, say like a Earth, right, with mountains and shit, why, if I'm up in a little airplane, it's going to be the crappiest airplane ever because I'm drawing it while looking through a camera. A little guy was to jump out of that airplane. Obviously, the air would first catch him and push him backwards as he fell down, but eventually he'd be falling straight down, give or take wind speed either way. And that is because the resonance is so much more powerful than his resonance that he is immediately caught up in basically a very strong wave of it. He becomes the grounding point in a massive equation that would take, well, much more than my mathematical capabilities to actually put into expression. But it's not a matter of space and time distorting into a big three-dimensional thing, which we just figured out how to show you because we have computers now that it's the 80s. It's a result of causality. The internet's been ground to a halt lately. Anyways. So, gravity is a form of mass resonance, basically. When someone or something falls, it is riding that wave. That is a wave on top of waves, kind of. It's not about space and time folding and causing shit to travel inward towards the mass of the object. That's fucking retarded. I'm sorry. That's retarded. It's just retarded. It's a good way to make people who are afraid to call bullshit fund your projects, okay? But it's fucking retarded. If gravity was a particle, why are we trying to detect graviton waves? A graviton wave is this very resonant force I'm speaking of, okay? And through a tremendous conversion of potential energy into kinetic energy, a massive graviton wave would be emitted. Another word for this is sound. Yeah, did you wonder why I had gravity and then sound? Because these are essentially planar, non-scalar movements of these factors, okay? If you picture gravity as a sound wave, not as manipulating space and time, but as traveling through the connectivity of causality, that is, the common energy that makes up everything, means that an air molecule a mile away from an air molecule can carry a wave like this. Okay? And whatever you think space is, I'm pretty sure it's got a lot more air molecules in it than that. But then you have light, you have electromagnetic radiation, you have lots of media, although weak in force, nearly undetectable by most means, it's still there. And that, I could expand on that to explain, but really any spherical equation can kind of explain how there's got to be a little bit of everything, a little bit of something everywhere, you know? Now let me just say this. To me, dark energy is the result of people painting before they did the science. I'm not someone who you can really argue astrophysics with, because if you walk outside with me, I can make the stars move. And good luck explaining that. But, you know, maybe I can just bend the light that's coming here. Maybe they just get excited when they see me. But that's an experiment I can repeat. I mean, I've never failed to make somebody's jaw drop with that. So, let me hypothesize in real time. Let's see if I can bring myself to a question and then answer it for myself. So previously, I explained the possibility of what we see as the stars, or at least some percentage, whether it be a large portion of it or a small portion of it, I don't really know. I don't think I have the data to make a determination on that. But they could, what we see here from Earth, if the Earth is round, okay, I know that's a big if for me. If the Earth is round, okay, or if the Earth is flat, okay. I'm glad I didn't finish, because I can still, regardless, okay. In the eye of the beholder, the light emanating from distant objects, if powerful enough, would coalesce into points of resonant wake. Okay. and you would then see what was back here up here. Only it might be mixed with, the appearance of this might be mixed with the appearance of that, and just a little bit of that before it makes it to you. Okay. Now, we've experienced this in astronomy because we've made some big mistakes as far as looking at a galaxy and then thinking something was in front of it and it was actually behind it. And I'm sure you've heard these different stories about how they just thought this was here and then it turned out to be a billion light years further or something like that, right? This is why. These billions and billions of different waves resonate. Not all of them, some of them. And when they resonate just the right way, you have billions and billions of those resonant waves that make it to the eye of the beholder. Okay, now, that to me is basically just how you explain all the mistakes that we've made in observation while taking particles out of the equation. Okay? Now, here is speculation. Here is me trying to figure out basically a spiritual possibility or problem and providing everybody the solution that they want at the same time. Because that's what I do, isn't it? I give everybody their way, even though they don't deserve it. Fractal realities. The halls of your ancestors, the spiritual ascendant planes, could be made up of these physical manifestations. Made up of. Could interact in our world through these fractal anomalies caused by those physical manifestations. So then, what does that mean? Beyond that, we could actually find physical worlds traveled to via physical distance. Here's your cake. Go ahead and eat it too. You're welcome. You're welcome. Oh, well, being as the local ambassador to the Hall of Ancestors, it's not surprising that you would take it that way, Mr. Conway. Speaking of you, so remember how I said the stewards were just stewards? I mean, the Stewarts were just stewards? I had no actual research evidence of that at the time, but it didn't take much. I just saw one fucking guy, some scholar guy in Scotland who runs his own little YouTube channel. That's exactly what the professed known thing is, that the House of Stuart was from a Scottish guy with a completely different name, changed his name to Stewart. Because he considered himself a steward of the throne, not an actual king. And that supports what do we call it? Magdalenian mythos. I think it was James. I think it was a James of Scotland. Yeah, James the First. James the First and the 15th or something, wasn't he? Trying to remember the other bits. It was just the one part that stood out to me. But anyways, so the pre-Roman architecture that I find significant as far as relating to my memories and the different Gaelic colonies that existed throughout the Mediterranean before the Phoenicians. The stepped triangle, okay, meant to it's kind of like a proto-Freemasonic way of venerating the proto-Egyptian mythos, and that house in Scotland has that architectural feature prominently. So I suppose they should be informed of my existence. Couldn't hurt. Anyway. So, what else do we have here? What else do I have written on the title? Okay, gravity, atomic clocks, particles, radiation, subatomic particles, excited valences. We've covered isotopes. Anything anybody can think of that we need to see if this theory applies to? Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. Family, friend, well, multiple friends in one family that we have. It's their grandfather. So that should be interesting. Anyways. So, different particles or different frequencies, basically. And that about sums it up. What is perceived as a freestanding color is simply a resonant wake that has been released as its own freestanding waveform. Perceived then as a particle by the act of perception, because the act of perception becomes the grounding point for the energy charge. Anyways. You're related to Obama and the Queen of Elizabeth. The Queen of Elizabeth. Queen Elizabeth. Through the Earl of Conway. Oh, yeah, magnetism. Magnetism. I guess I should go into more details about that. I referred to it as if I had already explained it earlier. Okay. Let's see, where's a good place to draw? What's the atomic number of iron? 16. Fuck. And I got a periodic table handy. I can't believe I don't know that anymore. I should know that. That's embarrassing. It's been approximately 25 years since I was interested in knowing that, but still. The least radioactive element. We'll see if we can figure out why that is too. Just as soon as somebody gives me the damn atomic number, because I'm going to draw it. Okay. I was going to say that's worthy of lighting up one more cigarette to discuss, but apparently I have already thought of such a worthy subject. 26. Well, that's very interesting. Huh. Oh, wow, that's beautiful. That is like that is beautiful. Hold on. I gotta pack a pack of cigarettes because I can't, like, you know, work without. Wait, what kind of shit show do you think I'm running here? Tell Dan. It's more like a schwa. Schwa. Battery low, the phone's plugged in, damn it. Oh, but is the charger plugged in? Of course it isn't. Why would the fucking charger be plugged in? Okay. So, just in case you haven't seen the many times I've explained what I just did to my cigarettes, I am reducing by a factor of 30 the micrometer of the endpoint of the filter. So now it looks more like a flat piece of paper, basically, which basically it doesn't, you know, absorb entirely the larger molecular compounds. It'll absorb entirely the organic molecular compounds that don't completely combust, but it will absorb on a percentile basis the larger and carcinogenic compounds. So it's worth doing. Anyways, 26. So, I just want to kind of okay, this is not going to work. I'm gonna have to put the phone there. I'm not drawing this bad, lady. Okay, so lack of the ability to 3D affect this. Really? It's still not fucking charging. Why isn't it charging? Fucking charge, you fucking bastard. Stupid piece of shit. Okay, please be charging. Don't just run out right in the middle of this. Alright. So if I was to take this is, if you notice, 26 divided by 2 is 13. 12, 13. Okay. If you took that and turned it on its side, oh god, I'm drawing while looking through the camera. Okay, I'm sorry. Oh god, that's just horrible. I didn't realize how bad the first one was until I tried to draw the second one. Okay. So you would have $12, $24, $25, $26 spherical waveforms. Okay. And the way this, like, I want to draw all the stages like I did the other one, but I don't even know if I can. But two things about this. It becomes obvious where the polarity comes from. Here and here. Okay. You have the ability to directly interact. Okay. So this can go either way. All right. It can go from negative here to negative to positive because it's always going both ways, basically. However, that means that the direction of this is sensitive to outside influence. So if I had a bunch of positive over here, one side of this would turn to face that, and then that side would become positive. Now, as far as the radioactivity goes, it just seems to me that this structure is almost self-correcting. Like, I don't want to speculate too much as to whether or not this waveform right here can become imbalanced on one side and actually have a negative charge on one and have a positive charge on the other. But basically what that would do is make extremely finite the actual radiation that would be able to come from this. It would almost quantize it. That basically would quantize it, I guess. So essentially it would be incapable of emitting an ultra high frequency resonance wake, and any resonance channeled into this would be directed like a pitchfork, almost. That's fucking fascinating. What do you think? But anyways, that's what I meant by beautiful when I thought of that. Just the way it seemed to like self-correct. Like any which way you apply energy to it, it's either going to be absorbed and passed directly through it, or it's going to become not like part of it, but it's going to take control of it and quantize it for a second, like an instant. Anyways, so what'd you think of that? Does that remotely make sense? It remotely makes sense to me. It's not quite satisfying, but certainly something to it. I think if this theory is correct, it would advance nanomechanics to a great degree. But I think more than anything, the best benefit of this might be the understanding that it would yield, and the data that would come from that could be applied to fighting cancer and other genetic diseases. Because once you finally figure out exactly what an atom is, then and only then can you manipulate it with precision. And when we're sitting here speculating about subatomic particles that are in different places in one place at the same time, you can keep that probe out of my ass, you know, like... Sound like some alien shit to me. No anal probing necessary here. But anyways. So the speed of light might be something worth trying to illustrate. Well, I gotta go from thinking on tiny, tiny level to thinking on big, big level. Ooh, that kind of hurts. Ow. Get another sip of coffee. I guess we'll just have to look at the spaceship. So, let me just repeat again. There's been no previous coherency established for why we should assume that one day we will create teleporters and tractor beams and time that shit, okay? But when it comes to speed, you know, people used to think if you went over 20 miles an hour, your face would get ripped off. People thought if you went over 60 miles an hour, all the atoms in the vehicle would fall apart. And they thought the same thing about breaking the sound barrier. They thought once you break the sound barrier, all your molecular cohesion is going to... Same thing's true about the speed of light. Okay. When they tell you nothing can travel faster than the speed of light, 99% of those people don't even understand what they're actually saying. Okay. C, E equals mc squared, is not the fucking speed of light. It's causality. Yeah, the very thing we've been discussing. Causality, the nature of the universe. Okay? The speed of causality, that is how fast electromagnetism can interact between one physical body and another. Okay? That's it. When you eliminate electromagnetic interaction, the speed of light is exceeded. Okay? So, we see this in purported observations of interstellar phenomenon that travel in time frames that, when extrapolated, reach beyond the purported speed of light. Okay, so we see the speed of light actually get broken, and we come up with time and space bending. Oh, it's not really. You know, there is no spoon, is basically what they fucking tell you. Okay? And while I agree that there is no spoon, it looks like there's a spoon for a reason. Okay? And you got to figure out the spoon. It's made to stir coffee and eat soup and shit, you know? Be practical, be logical. So, if I have light, okay? If I said, let there be light, and it showed up as a bunch of dots, those dots being standalone, as theorized, being standalone beings without a charge, okay? Have no mass, have no cohesion amongst each other, and do not seem like a substance upon which propulsion can be acquired. The idea of a solar sail, for instance, is kind of laughed at by a lot of physicists, okay? And if light is a particle, I agree with the people that are laughing. But if light isn't a particle, it only appears as a particle when it resolves into your eye or whatever you're measuring it with. Then light is a wave. So these aren't particles in the middle of space. This is a wave at a distance from an object of its emanation. Waves, 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 waves. So how do you harness waves and turn them into a media from which to propel yourself? Well, first of all, understand that you're going to be directionally limited. Okay? That is inescapable. You're not going to just be able to pick a point in space and push off of the light that's floating around in there, because they're not particles. Okay? If you want to go surfing, the direction that you're going to go is from the ocean to the shore. Well, if you want to ride a light wave, you need to go from a star or a shark-mounted laser beam. It's going to take a lot of sharks, though. A lot of sharks. They are at synchronized swimming. But, you know, if George Soros really wants to find out, he's got the money. Wait, what? Sorry. Got myself with that one. So, what do you to cause an amplification of those waves that will interact with some sort of physical aperture capture them and spit them back out against themselves in a way that is powerful enough to cause whatever is physically attached to this aperture to go forward. Well, I don't know exactly how, but the only way that I can theorize that or speculate that it might be done is through magnetic pulse sequences, by basically causing resonance at incredibly high frequencies so as to interact with and cause light to turn around. Just turn the fuck around. Okay? Then what you're going to have is really artifact, sort of like the little weird things that show up before earthquakes, right? Like an aurora borealis. Show up in little bursts where the light is being reversed on itself. And then at every point behind that, it is actually made to accelerate. So then the light itself becomes the afterburner, basically. So this is a very directional version of the concept I illustrated previously on my weird angular spaceship thing. Here you can this piece here. Now you might notice, as far as like a jet goes, this doesn't look right because the back end is bigger than the front end, and you're supposed to be taking in air, right? Well, theoretically, this could work with air, okay? But its main purpose is to have its ass end pointed towards the sun, okay? And hopefully you would be going very fast already before attempting to propel off of the solar energy. I'm not sure exactly what that speed would be, but I know it's got to be considerably fast. So as basically, the higher technology gets, the lower that needed speed is. Savvy, like the more this gets developed, the more advanced this technology is, the more we'd be able to sequence and resonate with electromagnetic energy as it emits from a star, and the frequencies that it emits from a star. And of course, finding the frequencies that are most effective, whether it be long, I would think it would be long form waves. And then, if it can be done at distance, finding the stars that best emit those frequencies. But up until then, we're going to have to, you know, gear it to work exactly with our sun, and we're going to have to try to get faster and faster until we get fast enough to where our sequencing ability can actually catch on, okay? And until then, the experiment can't be proven invalid. So, light should naturally come in right here, okay? And it's designed to be almost canceled out, but resonantly reflected. That's, I don't know, the best way I can explain what I'm thinking. So from there, you have some additional mechanisms to this pulse array, because in order for light to be effective, you can't just grip a little bit of it. You have to grip like a quarter mile of it, okay? Yeah. Otherwise, you're not going to get enough force. So to electromagnetically grip a long string of light, okay. So yeah, a basic theory demonstration could make it. I'm gonna drink some coffee and get the taste out of my mouth. What? Water. Mr. Conway said that you could experiment with this using water to slow down the waveforms. You could do a demonstrative simulation, but you couldn't actually do a valid experiment or even a valid prototype of any kind because, you know, conductivity issues, right? But you could demonstrate basically with wave machines working against each other of how the resonant wake would propel the magnetized hull. Basically, the hull itself would have to pulsate in its modulation to resonate against the light. Okay, then it would. But in the simulation, you could just use waves, and that would work just fine. But anyways, see if I can get focused on this again without messing up the broadcast. So your medium stages would actually be attached to endpoints or additional points on these booms. Okay. But then the boom itself would actually become the final antenna, if you will, making an elongation of the wave, basically. So, tiny pulses, medium pulses, long pulses. Okay? Those pulses being directionally amplified this way would then meet throughout. These pulses being placed outwards would meet at the medium areas. Savvy? And then, of course, you have the engines attached to the ship. Which I think looks pretty fucking metal, dude. Like, I'm pretty sure James Hetfield himself would want to fly that thing. Fucking thing looks metal. Oh, I apologize for the Illuminati time. It makes sense when you don't have long hair anymore and you can't bang it around. This isn't really a valid substitute, but it's fun. It's fun. You should try it. Got me a little dizzy. Hi. Okay. So, I guess that about wraps this up, right? Have we left anything? Do we have any more unsolved mysteries to explore? Wait, could you use... No, wait, correct. Okay. Could you use it to speed up water for hydroelectric generation? On the atomic resonance level, no. Be a valid use of energy. You know, you couldn't get more energy out of it, right? However, sound could be surprisingly useful for the generation of hydroelectric energy. Using sound waves to counteract gravity waves, basically. Gravity's like almost a sound that we're all deaf to. If you picture just the lowest drone you can make with your eyes closed while you yawn, you know, that's like the resonance of gravity. Maybe. But you could use sound, water upwards. That would be very interesting to try to tune. And it'd be very interesting to see if you could make an efficient enough mechanism that it could perpetuate itself, you know? But like, you know, there's just no way to really absorb, or excuse me, there's no, so like it'd be good for like a fancy trick, but I don't see it as like an energy efficient solution, right? So that'll be all. I'm gonna go ahead and go. Looks like I'm kind of running late actually. So thanks for watching. Don't forget to click that like button, y'all, and share this theory with your local professor and give them due credit, because you don't want to be on my bad side for other obvious logical reasons. Because making this public in a time-stamped format seemed to be my best course of action. But getting some people and some institutions interested in this theory would be a logical next step as far as getting it developed. And, well, getting me the recognition for it is part of the whole plan to save the world thing, which is why I bothered to squeeze my head to come up with this theory in the first place. So, that's going to be all for now. I got crap I got to do with my fish tanks, and I got to get them moving. So, yeah, like button, subscribe, blah, blah, blah. Peace, y'all. Thanks for watching.